Howdy, folks. Happy Wednesday. Happy hump day. We have two games from last night to discuss. I believe it's three today, which will be strange. That's more first-round, qualifying round content. Boston and Tampa playing second of back-to-back, but we'll discuss that in a minute, but we'll start with the pre-show. Go ahead, Russ.
All right. So first part of the pre-show, we'll do a smidgen of baseball in that yesterday – the Miami Marlins stole home against the Mets. And what was interesting about that is it looks like it's funny. All right. MLB is a mess, by the way. If you go to MLB.com, it is a complete mess trying to get into their website and box scores. Sometimes, web companies, when you want it to look slick, functional is better. But anyhow, the Mets had a young catcher named Sanchez in there, and guy on base stole two bases already for the Marlins. He's on third, and he just casually just throws a lollipop back to home. And the guy at third had a lead. He goes to steal home, and he stumbles. And he stumbles to the point where he puts his arms in front of him to keep himself from face planting and still goes home. The pitcher throws home to Sanchez, and he doesn't even tag him out. I think he drops the ball. And all I'm saying about this is what baseball 2020 is like, because there are guys in the league that can't play, normally wouldn't play, right, and it's skewing everything. Now, I'm not going to take away from the no-hitter yesterday because no-hitter's a no-hitter.
I didn't even know there was a no-hitter. Who threw
White
it?
Sox pitcher.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Giolito?
Yes. Giolito, yes.
He's a good prospect.
He's good. But you know what I mean? I'm not going to take away from a no-hitter, but I'm just saying basic everyday plays are being affected by guys who really shouldn't be there. It would be the equivalent of all of a sudden if the NHL were so short of players that they just said, all right, everybody who you've drafted the last 4 or 5 years from juniors gets to play in the NHL. That's what we're looking at.
Yeah, it would be as if the Leafs were so short on centers that Freddie Gauthier was the number one.
Yeah, I mean, the Marlins they've had 90 roster moves. 90.
Wow. And now you got to remember they were riddled with COVID early.
Yes.
Well, this is the thing about baseball that I think is ridiculous. And I've made it no secret, I'm a Yankees fan. They've sort of been collateral damage when it came to scheduling because they ran into the Phillies when the Phillies had their COVID issue, and all the games against the Phillies were canceled, and they have to make those up. Then the Mets last weekend, the Mets have people that were infected. Yep. Nobody on the Yankees was infected, but they were scheduled to play the Mets. So the entire 3-game series against the Mets was scratched.
Right.
Now they finally, after being off Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and then an off day on Monday, they go down to Atlanta, and it's rained out. So, and they've had 4 rain delays.
They're playing a lot of doubleheaders.
They're playing a shitload of doubleheaders, and really
7-inning doubleheaders.
7-inning doubleheaders, and that Major League Baseball, all they're doing is giving a team an extra player, like a 28th player.
Yeah, they need more than that.
Yeah, I mean, really, it's going to be very burdensome to these players play. I mean, the Yankees I think are scheduled to play 6 or 7 doubleheaders, and that's not like out of the norm. I mean, like right now, a lot of teams are playing a lot of doubleheaders, and it's just, it will contribute to the sort of comedy show, like you're saying, with players making stupid plays.
Oh yeah,
that you got AA and AAA players playing in the major league.
Yeah, we're going to be loaded with them. One last thing. So I wrote an article this morning for Sportsology talking about sports moments that have impacted me the most, right? So I had 10, really 11 because I did like one honorable mention, but I also, listed what my number one is. And I'll give you a chance to think about what yours is. Mine was when the 69 Mets won. That was massive because everybody in my house was into it. My grandfather, both grandfathers, but one of them especially used to take us to doubleheaders. Mm-hmm. But it was so big in New York. And I know everybody thinks they live in a great sports city, but it was so big. They were rolling television sets into our classrooms, the ones that they could do it, so we could see some of the game because they wanted us to see some of the Mets in the World Series because they were big time games. And that's that just lets you know how big it was. And to this day, like, it's my favorite team of all time. My favorite player, Tom Seaver, comes from that team. So that really impacted me. What about you?
And if you ask anybody in Canada, they did the same thing in terms of wheeling the TV into the classroom for 72 Summit Series between the Soviets. For me, it's funny because I'm doing all this completely off the top of my head.
Yep.
I can come up with a positive and negative.
Of course you can.
Yeah, because there's been so much pain.
Look, I have a lot of pain. Listen, actually, it's your choice.
Yeah.
It could be positive or negative. Nobody would be shocked if your most impactful moment is negative.
I mean, I'll go sport by sport. Say college basketball, because I was a Syracuse fan. It was probably Keith Smart shot when Indiana beat Syracuse in the national championship game.
Okay.
Football, if you're talking negative, it's wide right Scott Norwood.
Okay.
Positive, see, that's the thing. The Bills, I was at the Bills game, I think it was 1980, when they beat the Dolphins for the first time in a decade. So, and they tore down the goalposts at Rich Stadium. But, in turn, they've never won a Super Bowl. So if the Bills had won a Super Bowl, that would be the positive, but it's not there. So there you go. Okay, let's see. Baseball, I would say Reggie's 3 home runs in 78. I was 11 years old. The negative would obviously be Game 7 against the Red Sox in 2004. Okay, basketball. Actually, probably basketball, the low point would be Len Bias dying. Because I was just, being a Celtic fan.
It affected them for a decade.
Oh, it destroyed that team because you imagine Len Bias with an aging Bird and McHale and Parrott. Yeah. They would have stretched out that organization's, reign of terror, for example. But probably the Celtics winning over the Lakers I can't remember. I think it was 86. Okay, go quickly here. Okay, G. NHL Game 7, 1993, Kings Leafs. High point would be Miracle on Ice in 1980.
Mm-hmm.
So you can see where I'm going. There's always something. There's always some negative specter, and I think the ones that are more impactful are the ones that are negative.
Yeah, I mean, I'll just to do quickly for the sports part, since you did it that way. My basketball are the Nets winning back-to-back championships, and the last ABA championship there ever was.
Right.
The hockey is the Rangers. It beats Miracle on Ice for me.
Sure.
I already said the Mets. Football is the Jets, their first one. But I said I was 5 years old. I can't tell you if I even watched the game, but I was a massive Joe Namath fan because he was so marketed everywhere, and so much talk was about him in that era that you pretty much were if you were just alive at that point. So, and that's what started my whole bad history with the Jets is them winning then. And then I did have one negative one in there. The Munich massacre at the 72 Olympics. Well, because it really affected me.
No. I mean, that's definitely.
And for people that don't know it, like, they can go on the site, and I didn't want to get into detail about it because it really is gory. Well, you can click on the link
or watch the movie Munich, the Spielberg movie Munich, which was excellent.
But that was on live television. A lot of it.
Jim McKay probably would have, he should have won and probably did win an Emmy.
He should have. Yeah.
He was a sports reporter specifically, and I heard the story like Howard Cosell was sort of trying to muscle in and get the coverage, because Howard was.
Yeah, I don't know anything about that part.
Howard was a glory hound, and he wanted. And Howard always saw himself as wanting to do hard news. And McKay was doing the Olympics, and he hosted that, and I mean. Yeah. It was fantastic. One thing here, and I'm not trying to get political. I just saw this tweeted out by Logan Couture. And it is a statement of the, I would say, lack of ability of people to agree to disagree nowadays. Now, Logan Couture is Canadian. I believe he's from Ontario, but he must have applied for citizenship within the U.S.
No, he's not voting. He said he doesn't vote.
Well, then the tweet is a little confusing then, because he was sucker punched in Toronto he was out in some public place,
right?
And he was talking about voting for the Republican Party, which, I mean, he can only vote if he's
no, but he just said he was talking about if he voted, he would vote for them.
I see. Okay,
so the tweet is, I talked about voting for them, and I mentioned Trump by name, and then he said he was sucker punched. Now, again, I think that part is bad. I also think he's left out key details for sure.
Sure.
That maybe led up to that,
right? And
we're never going to know. So,
like, we don't know the complete context, but I do know from interactions with people on social media and reading the landscape of how things are on social media. I don't bring up politics on my Twitter feed. I
will retweet some stuff, but I won't have active conversation.
Yeah, I hesitate to even bring up politics, even make sarcastic comments on Facebook with people who are my friends, because people are just so on edge about the political situation. And maybe it's because the election is coming up in a couple months, but really it's just you cannot find people who are willing just to agree to disagree. And unfortunately, you can't even have conversations about things without getting into.
But he didn't agree to disagree either,
right? On
Twitter, that was the other part.
Yeah, he put it out. He put it out there, and it was basically like his statement of this is how intolerant people are. Well, but you're, by saying what you said on Twitter, you're echoing the intolerance.
Correct.
Or you're saying that you're not echoing it, but you're saying, oh, hey, not everybody who's anti-Trump is going to take a swing at you.
Correct.
But the problem is that everybody seems more and more on edge about things. And, there's other things that would lead someone to take a swing at a person. Well, yeah, if they insult like their wife or something like that.
I mean, but it's usually more than what we just heard. So that's why I look at that and I say, I don't want any part of it.
Yeah. All right. Hello, Hockey World. Today is Wednesday, August 26, 2020.
I'm Russ Cohen from Sportsology.
And I'm Michael Lagello, and this is the Hockey Buzzcast here on HockeyBuzz.com. All right, let's start with the games from last night. There were two games. Let's start with I can't say, though, with the more entertaining one, because I didn't watch a ton of the late game. I watched some of it and then watched the highlights this morning and saw some of the commentary. Yeah. But I concentrated a lot on the first game of the night. It was a really good game. 4-3 overtime victory for the Tampa Bay Lightning, evening the best of 7 series at 1 game apiece. Just as an overview, Russ, I looked at this game, and I said about the Bruins, they're lucky to be going to overtime. I thought they were significantly outplayed by Tampa Bay. Tampa Bay, I think they realized that they had fallen down 2-0. They were in deep trouble in the series. I thought they dominated the first period. I thought they, were pretty much in control for most of the game. But Boston, being the team that they are, even though they weren't playing at their best, they effectively counterpunched. They took a 1-0 lead. Were fortunate that they called for the review on a goal that I think it was Bogosian.
No, Bogosian set up the goal.
No. Whoever the point shot was from, whoever the defenseman was that shot the point shot that got deflected, but it was an offside call, and the Bruins called for the review, and then eventually Tampa tied it up, and then Boston took the lead again. Then Tampa responded, made it 3-2. Boston ties it up late in regulation to force overtime. And I was saying to somebody, a friend of mine who's a Bruins fan, if the Bruins win this game, Tampa Bay might be done, because Tampa Bay significantly outplayed the Bruins, and if the Bruins still win this game, that's a dagger. But we saw Palat score to give them to even the series. What did you think overall of this game?
I thought it was a game where Tampa learned something. I think, and I mentioned that earlier, that I felt like they were starting to learn what to do with the Bruins, and I looked at it and I said, okay, first thing was, yes, Marchand had a great game, but I don't think Marchand had his way with them as far as drawing penalties. So that was one thing. I thought goaltending was really good, and I don't think Vasilevsky had a big problem with them. Now, do I think Vasilevsky was cheated on the Bruins goal? I do, because if you look at that goal, how many Mississippi is he supposed to have the goal the puck under his pads until the referee decides I'm going to blow a whistle with guys just taking shots at it under his pads to knock it through?
Yeah, I think Coyle. I think it was Coyle that jabbed at it 2 or 3 times, and then
the whistle should have been blown.
Yeah,
and that's why Cooper was so mad. Cooper got additionally mad then because when he lost the challenge, which was rightly so. But understand that was a ridiculous period for Tampa because you took one off the board and you put one onto the other team that shouldn't have been there. So as a coach, you're mad, but you know what? They overcame that.
Yeah.
And that's, to me, is the biggest step forward for Tampa in this, is that they overcame that. The Bruins played a great game, but the Bruins also looked like they were dead in overtime. They had no legs.
See, that's the thing. I didn't think Boston played a great game.
I thought they played a really good game.
Yeah, I thought that they were counterpunching. I think they realized in this game it was sort of like a light heavyweight and they're against a heavyweight, and that wasn't the story in game one. In game one, I thought the Bruins came out, really strong. They got the lead, and then they sort of sat back. And in this game, I never got the feeling that the Bruins were in control. They got the early lead. I think they were fortunate to get the early lead, obviously on that non-whistle, and then they sort of just hung around and stayed in the game. But I never thought that they were in control, and I didn't think Halak was particularly strong. The book on Halak, at least it seems to be, and you've seen the goals that have been scored on him. The long shots, to get deflections, because he doesn't seem to be. I mean, is any goalie really strong on deflections? But some can see through the legs and find the puck. And the 2 Hedman goals in game one, and then the one of the goals yesterday was a deflection that ended up being ruled offside.
He let up a bleeder though. He did.
Yeah, and then it's tough to criticize a goaltender when he allows a goal on a breakaway.
No, but he still had it, and then isn't that the one that bled through his?
Well, no, it was the Kucherov goal, I believe.
Right. I mean, that one he
Coleman's second goal.
Coleman's second goal, correct. That one he could have stopped.
Right. I didn't think he had much of a chance on the Kucherov goal.
No. But people were ripping Kucherov before this game. He had a really good game. Coleman had an exceptional game.
Yeah.
We'll talk about the Steve Stamkos story because it is weird that there's a complete 100% blackout of information from this. Yeah. And to be very honest, I really think the Tampa media should dig more into it. But they're sort of taking the advice of John Cooper not to ask. But if I was in that market, I would ask.
Yeah, we'll let you know when he's available. No,
yeah. I mean, that's not the way it's supposed to work.
Right, but the thing is that right now everything is shrouded with the return to play. It's like, okay, you can get away with the blanket unfit to play, and then that's it. It's like, okay, well, how about we know the reason why he's unfit to play? It's like in the Dallas-Colorado series, okay, what exactly is wrong with Ben Bishop?
Right.
But we don't know. And, right now Dallas doesn't have to answer that question because they're up 2-0 and Khudobin has played well. But I mean, if they all of a sudden lose a couple games to Colorado and you need Ben Bishop to be in there, people are going to say, where the hell's Ben Bishop? He's your number one goalie.
Right.
So now.
All right. So since you talked about that, I was on the call yesterday for Rick Bowness and Dallas, because I kind of want to get to the bottom of the Ben Bishop thing. And people can go to Sportsology. They can read what I wrote, because I really do think Bowness might be the best coach in the bubble right now. If you think about it, the winning streak his team is on. If we all would have said Khudobin's going to be the guy that's leading them there, not Bishop, and now all of a sudden the offense was back on track, like that would have been like, yeah, okay, that's all going to happen, right? But it has. But when Bishop's name came up, this was the oddity in the conference. The first thing he said was, well, he skated today. And so, of course, you could feel the media's ears perking up like, oh, Ben Bishop skated today. And then they were like, well, what's the likelihood? When do you think he could play? And he goes, he's still unfit to play. And that's all he would say on it.
Right.
And he said it that way. And that's all I'm going to say on it.
Yeah.
That pretty much told me that Ben Bishop has fallen out of favor.
See, okay. I don't know if that's the case simply because the rules that have been put in place. That's all they've been told that they can really say. And if a coach goes,
no. A coach, because Mike, he went before that, he said, hey, I love both goalies. They're both terrific goalies. If he wanted to say, hey, when it's time, I'll decide if it's Ben or Khudobin, he could have said that. Nobody's stopping him from saying that.
Yeah, I mean,
stop him from saying that.
No, but it just like it seems that a coach will only give out more information if it's something that, okay, well, he's going to be out for the rest of the playoffs. There's like a no doubter type of thing. Right. Whereas he's basically saying he's unfit to play right now, and because of the rules that have been put in place, we're not going to go any further than that. So I get.
No, but this is I'm pretty sure this is a personal decision.
Well, I mean,
now I'm not saying Bishop could play all this time because he's only skating now. So clearly he had an injury.
Well, right. I mean, right. Okay, right now, and I mean, we'll talk about this series a little more when we get to the previews and stuff like that. But right now, you're up 2-0. Colorado is. I don't think they're in panic mode, but they definitely have to be concerned about the way that they played in the first 2 games. And Khudobin is coming off arguably his best game of the postseason. Of course, you're not going to change right now. Even if Bishop was 100% healthy, you're keeping Khudobin in for Game 3. So why foment a controversy when you're going to go with the guy? So I mean that might be part of what it is.
But here is the other problem. Okay, the other problem is if Bonus wants, he could just say, "Hey Bishop, you're just going to skate till the end of this series. We're not going to activate you," and there's nothing he could do. And he won't talk about it, and nobody could talk about it. Tell me that why that's not a possibility.
Because they could lose the next 2 games and they'll need him. That's why.
Okay, but then the minute Bishop comes back, you will see that this is a personal decision. That is you're basically proving my point for me.
It's very possible we don't know. The unknown is.
I mean, nobody knows for sure,
right? But bringing it back to Boston and Tampa. They're playing second of back-to-back games today or tonight. And, believe me, I've been on the beat with the Leafs. So when you post out there, okay, so-and-so is starting, Freddie Anderson starting for Toronto. Gee, there's a bulletin. And people were saying Yaroslav Halak is starting for Boston. What, they're going to start Daniel Vladar in Game 3 of the second round? Of course they're not. They're going to start Halak, even though it's back to back. And so I'm assuming Vasilevsky's going to. That's not really news, but of course because it's back to back and everybody is in the mindset where, well, but you can't play the starter 2 games in a row. Yes, you can because it's the playoffs. Let the analytics be damned. And we'll see, we know Halak is a little older than Vasilevsky, but I'm sure their measurables drop a little bit in the second of back-to-back games, but that's just something that's going to, they'll have to compensate for that. But the other thing that came out was Ryan McDonough will not play. And what Cooper did yesterday was he went 11-7. He went 7 defensemen, adding Luke Shen, and adding Braden Coburn. It was Coburn who had the long shot that was deflected. But
and they both played well.
They both played well. Yeah. So, but I mean, again, I expected this series to go 7. So even no matter who wins today, the other team could very simply and very easily bounce back and tie the series at 2 games apiece. So it'll be interesting. Obviously, it'll be sort of determinative because one team will take the lead. But I don't think it's going to be whoever wins Game 3 is going to win the series. The other game last night was a little bit surprising. Not to say that I had predicted Vegas to sweep the Canucks.
No, and I didn't either.
Yeah, but the Canucks played more of a Canuck type game. Yep. And Vegas could not compensate for that. It was more of a offensive game that I think Vegas would have liked to have played. Vancouver got goaltending from Markstrom, got a good performance out of Elias Pettersson.
Well, let's talk about that for 1 second. That play that he set up Horvat with, he turned on another gear, and when he did the wraparound, that rebound, I guess it went right to Horvat, right? The rebound did. That was an unbelievable move. I mean, again, and I still say a gutsy move considering he knows there are guys in this league that just want to rub him out every shift that he's on.
Sure.
And it just showed, he had 3 points in that game. I think he's got 11 so far in the playoffs. Like, he's basically a superstar. I mean, he really is. I mean, it's just a matter of time till everybody calls him that. But that was a game where, Vancouver showed their speed. They kept the puck out of their zone. They kept moving it the other way. And when they moved it the other way, they struck. They were making strikes. And so that worked out for them. But I don't know if Vegas looked slow. I'm not going to say they looked slow. I just think you're right. I think their defense was unprepared to cover Vancouver playing at top speed. And, it's a challenge when Hughes is out there and has the puck. How many times does he get that puck to the next best guy in motion? It's unbelievable. Like,
the thing is like, I don't know. You cannot allow, and Chicago did this effectively with McDavid in that qualifying round. McDavid is one of the fastest skaters in the league. Well, what Chicago did to sort of neutralize that or limit that is they were on him before he could even generate speed in the neutral zone or in his own zone. They were on him from the very beginning. So he was unable to build that speed through the zone and attack offensively. Last night, Hughes and Pettersson were flying into the Vegas zone. And Vegas is not a bad skating team, but they're not as good as Vancouver is. Yeah. And you saw none of the shenanigans in game one. Ryan Reeves was stapled to the Vegas bench. I think he played like less than 7 minutes. And Roussel was the same for
after talking it up big pregame.
Yeah, I mean that's fine. Yeah, that's fine, but the thing is like when Vancouver scores early and Vegas is behind, they can't afford to put Ryan Reeves out there because one, he can't score, and two, he could take penalties, and then that would just perpetuate everything. But I mean, Toffoli gets back in the lineup. He scores a goal. Pettersson with a goal and 2 assists.
Toffoli got a gift, though. He did.
Well, sure, but I mean, he was
still got to score it. Yeah,
he's out of the lineup. They bring him in. He scores a goal. That's got to be a boost for them. But
I'll tell you who played great, and this was another good little pickup by Benning, and that's Tyler Mott. Tyler Mott is does everything kind of guy, can bring the puck up the ice, plays a little bit of defense, will lay the occasional hit, doesn't really make mistakes, and you need like 4 or 5 of those guys in your lineup, even if they're not going to score points, just to not give up points.
And he's got 4 goals in the playoffs.
Right? No, I know he's been hot, but I'm just saying, even if he's not scoring, he's helping you. That's what I was trying to say in a roundabout way. But yes, he is having an exceptional playoff anyhow.
Yeah, but when you get depth, it's one thing during the regular season to get depth scoring, to get offense from your 3rd and 4th lines. Most of the time, you're just looking for energy and a change of pace and a little, rubbing out of the opposition. In the playoffs, if you get goals from your bottom 6, they're golden. I mean, that makes such a difference. That's why you can't underestimate the effect that the Goudreau, Gord, Coleman line. I mean, Coleman scored 2 goals yesterday. Gord assisted on the game winner in overtime. That third line was the difference for Tampa Bay against Columbus and might be the difference for them if they beat Boston. So, I mean, 3rd line, 4th line, getting offense from those guys is so important.
So, you know what they're paying Tyler Mott?
Probably $800,000, something like that.
$975.
Yeah.
Boy, are they getting production out of that, man.
Yeah, it's worth its weight in gold. Yeah. Okay. Some news and notes here. Claude Julien was interviewed this morning. He said he feels a lot better after having a stent placed when he was in the bubble. Yeah. He had his heart issues in Toronto. He indicated that he will be back next season, which is a relief. It's good to hear because he's a good guy and a very good coach. One note I saw, and it was rather interesting, and maybe an indicator of where things are going to go with free agency. Corey Crawford indicated that he would be open to going to Montreal as a backup to Carey Price. And remember, Corey Crawford is a Montreal native.
Right.
If he cannot find a starter's job out there, that the fallback would be to go home and back up Carey Price. Now, the thing is, Montreal's got a ton of cap space. They're one of the few teams that does, but I don't know whether they'd be willing to pay any more than normal backup prices, which, $1.5 million, $2 million on a 1-year deal, or maybe a little longer. He takes a little less to go back home, but I don't think that that scenario is out there, because Crawford played well with Chicago this year, and there are a ton of starter jobs out there this year. So I think he's saying that sort of like grease the works at home. But do I think that Corey Crawford is going to be left hanging out to dry and not get a starter's job with so many goaltending situations?
No, he'll get one. But speaking of that, and I haven't listened to the sound file, and Jan's here. Hey, Jan.
Hey, guys.
I haven't had a chance to, but there's a couple of tweets out there that are basically saying, after Rutherford talked about the
let's bring that up.
Okay. About the trade, that he's talking about trading a goalie, but of course won't say who it is. And I was asked about that yesterday on Sirius, and I thought they might still end up waiting until the trade deadline to do that, to see how injuries go and otherwise, because you could trade one of those two guys and be in bad shape. And Rutherford, I think, is just stoking the coals. I don't think he's trading a goalie tomorrow. There's no reason for him to do it unless he gets a great trade. I think he's just trying to drum up business. I do think he's trying to drum it up for Murray, but I don't know if he's going to get anything. I don't know if anybody's going to care right now.
I think he's drumming up business for either one of them. I heard he was on Hockey Central this morning, and said, I mean, remember the situation with Pittsburgh is unique. You've got two, I believe, arbitration eligible RFA goaltenders, 1 year away from expansion. And if you sign one or both of them, first of all, they're going to be looking for more money. And Murray is coming off a bridge deal where he was making in the threes. So he's probably, with 2 Stanley Cups under his belt, going to be looking for $5 to $6 million on a long-term deal. Jari is coming off an ELC where he was making, I think, less than $700,000. And he had a really good year. So he's probably going to be looking to make what Murray is making right now, which is in the threes. So you're talking about, all of a sudden, if you keep both of them, spending $10 million on their goaltending, and they're not doing it.
It would only be temporary, Mike. I mean, they would only be.
I know, but
season.
But I think, Jan, give me your opinion.
This is like the Rangers. Remember, before Jan goes, it's the same thing. Everybody's like, well, the Rangers have to trade a goalie, and they didn't. They didn't even trade at all. These guys have to trade a goalie, but they don't have to trade it now.
Yeah, but
But Shesterkin is don't forget, in this case, Mike's scenario, right? Shesterkin is expansion ineligible. He can't be selected, right? So you don't have to protect all of them, right? So it's we're talking about Lundqvist, right? Lundqvist.
No, but I was talking about before this whole.
Okay, because Lundqvist won't have to be protected either.
No. Just before the season began, everybody was like, the Rangers have to trade a goalie, and they didn't.
Yeah, well, right, but now
these guys have to trade one, but I don't think they have to trade it now. That's what I'm
saying. I think they do, because I think they risk getting less at the deadline with the specter of expansion 2 or 3 months after the deadline, and then potentially losing one of those goalies for nothing. I think that the closer you get to that, the less you're going to get. The value
it depends. I mean, if a team's goalie goes down, you'll get more.
Yeah, but you're praying that happens. Whereas there are teams out there that legitimately need a number one goaltender.
Okay,
but you have a saturated market right now, also with the number of goalies that are out there, right? So they may hold their hand for a little while, wait to see what plays out in the marketplace, and then potentially try to deal one of them when the musical chairs ends and somebody's left without a goalie.
Right. I mean, I think that, obviously Rutherford has moves that he wants to make. He intimated on that on his interview today that he's not done. Just like Dubas said yesterday, he's not done. This was
they all say that now.
I know, but I think that they're based on the way Rutherford talked and based on the fact that he made a deal 2 weeks after he said he was going to make changes.
Yeah, but that's like Arnold Schwarzenegger saying, "I'll be back," and what was it, like 10 years later he came back,
and he's always back. He's always back.
As they said in Running Man, only in a rerun. So
right. No, but the way I look at this is, okay, what you're saying makes sense, Mike. But let's say, for argument's sake, they trade Murray. They go with Jarry. He's not looking great. Maybe there's an injury. Now all of a sudden, Casey the Smith is leading my team to who what I hope is another Stanley Cup appearance. Is that really going to get you to the Cup? No.
That's why I believe that if they trade Murray, that a goaltender will be coming back. And if you want, okay, and again, everything with me is
of course the chat room wants it to be Freddie Anderson.
Yeah, right. I think Mike is leaning that direction also. Right. If you haven't figured that one out.
And it makes absolutely perfect sense for a couple of reasons. One,
now you're willing to trade Anderson
for Matt
Murray back?
Sure, but this is what we're talking about here. Anderson's got a year left in his contract. That means you have no problems in terms of protection when it comes to expansion. He's a free agent. Then Jarry is the guy you protect. He provides you either a veteran backup or possibly a 1A, 1B scenario with Jarry for next year. And then,
but it won't be even up, Mike. It won't.
No. And honestly, there was some indication yesterday that if a Murray deal was going to happen, which involving Toronto would have happened as part of this deal that just happened. I don't know if that's the case because you consistently have seen teams make one deal and then maybe make another one down the line. So it's possible based on other things falling into place that another deal could happen. One other situation that people don't realize, Merzlikins in Columbus is exempt from expansion. So Columbus doesn't have any situation. They
don't have a situation.
Right. They'll protect Corpusalo, but there are teams out there that have two goalies that are going to have issues. So, but going back to Crawford, I don't think Crawford is going to have a problem finding a starter's job. I think the problem is he's going to have a problem finding somebody willing to give him a longer than I would say a 2-year deal.
Right.
I don't think he's getting more than 2 years.
Yeah. 3 years would be really, that's what he would look for, but I don't know if he'll get it.
I don't even think he'll get that from Chicago because I believe he's 35 right now. And if that's the case, now I know that the rules changed with the new CBA on 35. If he retires, there's not going to be a cap hit. But he's 30. He turned 35 on New Year's Eve. So he's, I would say, 2-year deal. And maybe he gets 3 from Chicago, but it probably will be similar to the Pekka Rinne contract with Nashville, where he took a little less to stay in Nashville. Maybe Crawford takes a little less.
But just remember this: trading a goalie for a goalie does nothing for Rutherford this season. It doesn't.
No, he's
going to want to improve on that and improve his roster while he does it, or he's not going to do it.
Well, the point is he'd also be getting another asset back from Toronto as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, but
if he made that trade.
But it's just he already has 2 assets. He's looking for more. He already has these 2 assets.
Well, right, but the thing is that the asset that he has is going to cost him more than the asset that he's going to get.
But it doesn't matter. It's like it
does because he needs.
It doesn't make. All he cares about is next year, and that doesn't make them better next year. It doesn't.
Well, it depends on what he gets.
If he were to get Freddie Anderson for Murray, that does not make them better for next year.
I'm sure it will be a bigger deal, and I'm sure if he makes another trade with another team for Murray, it's going to be bigger than just a goaltender coming back. It could be a draft pick. It could be.
They don't have a lot to throw into deals anymore. Let's start there. So it might be just Murray, and he's probably going to look for 2 players back. That's what I think he's going to do, because otherwise, if he doesn't improve his everyday roster, I don't think the money part matters that much to him, because one of them would get dealt anyhow. End of the day, I just think they need another player, and I think that's what he's looking for.
Now, the other little bit of news.
The goalie, the last thought on that is I think he wants the goalie to be the throw-in, not to be the main crux of the deal. That doesn't help him.
Right. But if Toronto in this case is viewing Anderson as an impediment for them getting to that next level, they may not value him similarly as Murray, and he may be able to.
They should look at it that way, but it doesn't look like they are.
No,
right. Mike does. Mike clearly values it that way.
No, and I don't look at Freddie Anderson as an impediment because I don't think he was the reason why they lost this year. But
so let's say he signed another 3-year deal and he didn't win for another 3 years. When in those 3 years would you decide that they can't win with the guy? Probably, at some point you have to decide they can't win with the guy.
Probably after year 2, but that's assuming a lot. That's also taking into consideration what else Dubas has done to surround. Like all of a sudden they get 2 right-hand shot top 4 defensemen and they still lose in the first round. Then the process of elimination is okay. Your goaltending is not good enough. But
right, and if you figure that out next year, you may be a year late from being able to acquire the guy you want.
But my argument, Russ, is that this team is so fatally flawed that it has not I mean, Anderson was not strong against Boston 2 years ago or 2 seasons ago. He was not the reason why they lost to Columbus. The reason why they lost to Columbus is they couldn't penetrate Columbus's defense and couldn't score enough goals. Okay. And had to put together a super line and strip other lines of their centers to be able to even try to score. And they got shut out in that game by, and only scored with the last 4 minutes in regulation when they did it the first time. All right. The other bit of news that it shouldn't come as a shock, but may affect what they do in the off season is Vladimir Tarasenko. Doug Armstrong announced that he is having shoulder surgery again.
Yeah, is it the same shoulder?
I don't know, but they
didn't say which shoulder. The last time was the left shoulder. I don't know if they said this time which shoulder it specifically is, but he's had chronic shoulder injuries. 2007-18, he had a surgery.
Yeah,
he played the Stanley Cup playoffs when they won it with a injury as well.
And it's all back to the World Juniors. He first
shoulder surgery earlier this year, and now he's having another shoulder surgery.
Yeah, he's out. They say out a minimum of 5 months. Yep. Which, if you say he has the surgery today, you're talking September, October, November,
back
December.
in February, maybe early February.
Right, which would be early in the regular season. But
I don't know about it. Well, again,
it could be middle.
Potentially starting if we start in December. You're still missing 2 months of the regular season.
Right, and this is the issue.
25% of the season.
Yeah, and this is
a third of the season technically.
And this is the issue. You're
talking if it's in a bubble or not, but anyhow, yeah.
You're talking about a situation here where they have a big free agent to re-sign. They don't have a ton of cap space. Of Tarasenko's $7.5 million cap hit would be put on LTIR, but it won't be opened up for the entire year. It would only be opened up while he's on the injured list. So it doesn't really help if they decide that they want to re-sign Pietrangelo. Right now they are still. It would delay the decision, and maybe they could make a trade or dump a Tyler Bozak or dump a Jaden Schwartz in the middle of the year when Tarasenko comes back. But that's
they could go that way.
Right, but that puts you up against the wall, or either that, or they go out and they acquire somebody who's got a significant cap hit that is already on LTIR to open up more cap space. But I don't get the impression that St. Louis wants to go.
I don't think they'll do that.
So, in the end, Armstrong to be able to sign Pietrangelo is going to have to go down the road of either having Alex Steen retire, or buy him out of his final year, trade Tyler Bozak, or trade Jaden Schwartz, or trade a guy like Colton Parayko. And it's all a question of whether what Pietrangelo will do to stay there. Like if he takes less, if they offer him 8 years. The only talk I've been hearing, Russ, is he wants to stay there and they want him back. Well, that's great, but
that's nonsense. I mean, all that is just chatter. It's nothing. It's not even about term either, I don't think. I just think he wants to be among the top paid defensemen for a period of time. And if they don't give that to him, he's not going to stay. Right. He's not, because they didn't look great this year. And he's probably going to look down the road and say they may never look great again. So, or it may take them another reboot to do that. So he may be just looking for a better team who can pay him more money. I mean, and teams will be willing to do that. So I think he's hitting the market no matter what. Now, whether he gives them the last offer, that's a whole other thing.
Now, and Jan, I heard some chatter about, well, of course they want Pietrangelo back, and now they may regret the deal that they signed Justin Falk to, because he didn't have a very good year. I think he had only 16 points. But good luck trying to move Justin Falk. You're talking 7 years at $6.5 million.
Well, we thought they overpaid him at the time, right? I mean, they were basing his production based off what he did in Carolina. The system now that they have now is obviously different in St. Louis. And he was coming off a good year, but not one where I think all of us thought that 7 years at that price point was warranted. The other chatter I've heard a little bit is that if they want to go sign Pietrangelo, even with Tarasenko being in, or before Tarasenko was hurt, there was some chatter that Vince Dunn could be a cap casualty because he's going to be expecting a deal. I don't foresee that happening, but I have seen his name obviously out there now.
Yeah, I don't think that's
home Bart's look. You have Tarasenko out at a minimum of 2 months, right? He's going to be reevaluated in 5 months. That doesn't necessarily mean
best case scenario 5 months. It could be longer.
Right. That could be longer, right? So if I'm St. Louis, right, if I'm realistically expecting 5 months, but likely I would add another month on that at a minimum. Now you get 3 months of wiggle room to play with LTIR. Right. You could potentially sign him with the, I wouldn't say expectation, but the cognizance that during the year guys get injured, guys end up missing expanded periods of time where you may have the quote unquote flexibility, unfortunately, of putting another guy on LTIR to free up the salary even when Tarasenko comes back. And we're all presuming that this chronic injury can get repaired by surgery and it won't preclude him from playing moving forward also.
Right.
I would say this. I would say if for some reason Pietrangelo isn't re-signed, the money is well spent on Falk because he'll instantly run their power play and he will get those numbers back. And they know that. They do.
Yeah, but I think
if he's if he is re-signed, now you're spending money on an asset where you're not maximizing his talent based upon the role that he's in. So in essence, I wouldn't say it's a sunk cost, but you're wasting a certain amount of money based upon what you could have used elsewhere.
Yeah, and they also have issues besides Dunn. Both their goaltenders are up after the year. Maybe they don't have a problem re-signing Binnington, even though he didn't have a good performance in the playoffs. But they're both making in the $4 million range, and I would assume that one of them isn't back, and they just go with a cheaper backup, so they save money there. But RFAs: Sanford, Barbashev, Robert Thomas, those are going to cost.
Yeah.
And now
they're going to cost. There's a good question here, Mike, from the chat room. Anthony was asking, why isn't McClellan talking about, or why aren't the Caps talking about extending Ovechkin? I think they probably have talked to him, and I think he's probably said, let's see what happens, because I think if the Caps are going downward, he is going to leave. He's going to leave the NHL. He will go to Russia. Maybe he'll play for a year to help raise money for the KHL, make him a bigger league, and then he'll be the hockey czar there. Like, he's eventually going to get that job. Whether Fetisov takes a different position and lets Ovi move in right away, he'll have some high-ranking position for that league the minute he's
one thing. They cannot announce an extension until after the season. So it may be in the works. You don't know. We don't know.
It could be. I don't foresee it because I have a feeling he's going to want to see how things play out first.
Sure. I mean, if he doesn't,
he doesn't even know who the coach is going to be.
Right. And I'm sure that's going to have a lot. That's going to have a lot of an effect on it, and also whether he has a legitimate chance of catching.
Remember when Jágr brought his coach to Pittsburgh? Who was that guy? Jágr. Oh no, we're using no. Was it in Washington? Jágr brought Jágr brought in one of his Czech coaches.
I don't know.
I think it was Pittsburgh. I think it was Pittsburgh for a year, and it didn't work out. Hold on.
Yeah, I don't remember, but yeah. So, I mean, I would be surprised, but if Ovechkin has a chance, if he has a chance to catch Gretzky, which I think he does, and I think he would stay around for that because I mean, hell, Pavel Datsyuk's playing in the KHL at age 43. There's no time limit on him playing in the KHL unless he has some debilitating injury late in his.
I mean, we don't know what the aches and pains are that he wakes up with, but
exactly.
I'm guessing he's got a few.
Right. I'll just answer this because I don't know where Joe is going here. Is Toronto becoming a wanted destination with all these changes and panic. Where's their panic?
Yeah, I don't think there's panic.
There's not panic. I mean, okay, there's concern of the fact that they've lost all 4 years in a row in the first round, but I don't think the Kapanen was a panic trade. I think it was actually a well thought out move. And if you look at it, there was some reporting in the Athletic. I think it was Pierre LeBrun. The Leafs talked to as many as 7 teams about Kapanen, and in every deal they were looking for a first round pick and a prospect. And I think Anaheim was one of the teams, and Anaheim would trade. I think they were like 6th overall. They wouldn't trade a pick that high, but there's genuine surprise that they got as much as they did for Kapanen, who, I like I said, I like him as a player, but Jim Rutherford was very effusive in his praise of Kapanen, saying he's definitely going to be in their top 6. I just don't know if he's a top 6 player. So, I mean, that's a big risk for Pittsburgh giving up. They gave up futures. They took on cap space for a player that they believe in, and that's fine. And they have a window of a couple years with a 33-year-old and a 34-year-old top 2 centers who are future Hall of Famers. But Kasperi Kapanen doesn't guarantee them winning the Stanley Cup.
No.
Yeah.
Oh, you know what it was, Mike?
Yep.
There was a report in 2000 that Ivan Holinka was supposed to get a 3-year deal with the Penguins.
Okay.
And Yager was the one pushing for that.
Now okay. I mean that makes sense.
And so Ovechkin would try a similar thing, I think.
Yeah, but who would be there?
I don't know.
Is Sergei Fedorov a coach in the KHL? I mean,
maybe. No, I mean, maybe he would ask him to coach in the NHL.
Maybe Alexei Kovalev is the next Washington Capitals head coach.
I don't think it would be someone he played with, but I do think it could be someone like Fedorov. Now,
the one of the things that was interesting that Rutherford discussed, and we'll talk about this before we discuss the games today. Rutherford was talking about, and Jeff Merrick asked the question regarding players who are restricted free agents who are arbitration eligible. We discussed this off air about teams being willing to not even qualify and how likely that will be. And Rutherford said, well, it's definitely an option. And, he's not going to give up leverage on the ability for teams to get players for less. And I think that in a flat cap, and Rutherford said this could be 2 or 3. I think he said 2 or 3.
Actually, so Mike, sorry, let me just cut in just so I can finish out the Holinka thing. So it looks like he coached in 2000, and then they fired him 4 games into 2001 when the Penguins were 0-4. Mario was like, get the hell out. And they put Rick Kehoe in charge.
Okay. But with those situations, general managers in the flat cap, they're going to use every mechanism available to them to get players for less. And I pulled up a list of players who are restricted free agents who teams could potentially walk away from. Now, some of these are good players. I don't think Pittsburgh is walking away from Matt Murray or not qualifying Matt Murray, or the Sabres are not qualifying Sam Reinhart. So I won't be ridiculous. But to go down the list here, I have heard the name of Athanasiou in Edmonton. He's an arbitration eligible RFA. He's making $3 million. The qualifying offer would be 10% more than the salary from last year, so it would be 3.3. I think they would probably qualify him at that, but go down the list here.
Okay,
Troy Stetcher, Vancouver. 17 points in 69 games, made $2.32 million. So the cap hit would be about 2.5.
They'll sign. They won't walk.
I don't think they'll qualify. I'm not saying that these teams.
I think they will qualify him.
Okay, Jan, do you think so?
Yeah, I think for that amount they qualify him.
Okay, Devon Shore, acquired from Anaheim for Sonny Milano. Columbus acquired him from Anaheim. 12 points in 45 games. Salary $2.3 million. I think there's no way they qualify him.
No, I think they have plenty of money. They're going to qualify him.
And they got Grigorenko coming. It
doesn't matter. They'll trade the asset. They're not going to let a guy walk who had 12 points in 45 games who also plays center, right?
Yeah, I honestly,
they're not going to let that walk.
Yeah, I disagree. I think they won't qualify him. They'll try to get him cheaper, or they'll let him walk. Jan,
I think they're going to try to get him cheaper.
Yeah. Evan Rodriguez was the guy I mentioned yesterday.
See ya.
Well, no. I think the Leafs want him, but the Leafs don't want him at $2 million.
$2 million, right? Exactly. Right.
They'll say, okay, we'll sign you for a year at 1.1.
Right.
And you're a UFA after, and you have a good year, then you're going to earn more money either with us or with somebody else.
Right.
If they say no, well, and they will not qualify him.
Yep.
They'll walk away. Matt Benning, $1.9 million for Edmonton. Their defense is bad, but they've got young kids coming in Bouchard and Broberg, and Ethan Bear played this year, and Caleb Jones. I think they don't even qualify him.
I think they'll try and keep him and offer him less. I do, because I don't think they're deep enough in where they could just let defensemen walk away.
Now, I mean, remember, it's a stare down contest with these teams.
I know.
They're going to say, we're not going to qualify you, but we'll try to get you. We'll sign you for this. And do these players really want to go into unrestricted free agency in an open market with a flat cap and with not a lot of money out there? That's the thing. They may decide to stay.
But he's still an NHL depth defenseman.
Sure.
And if you go and try and sign one, it's still going to cost you $975,000 or $1 million. So I think that's what they'll offer him, and then it'll be up to him whether he takes it or not.
Now, here's a guy that we both like who had a terrible year, Mark Jankowski.
Mm-hmm.
$1.675 million, only scored 5 goals in 56 games. He had a horrible year.
I think they will give him the money to trade him. I think if they were to not qualify him, teams would line up to take him.
Jan?
I'm going to say very borderline. I'm going to say they're going to try to get him at a different price point, just because I think they're going to view him as overpriced. Look, flat cap changes everything, right? If the cap had gone up, you got it was at 1.1 going to 2 million, you might question, but you'd say, you know what? I can live with it. Now, you're going to have to start making really tough decisions, and they're going to go to players and say, look, you think you can get more than that in the marketplace? We said anybody at that mid-level price point or below is going to have a hard time getting a lot of money in this marketplace. So teams are going to try to turn the screws a little bit to get guys back either at flat or a slight decrease, especially if the production doesn't warrant it.
Except he's a big centerman who had double-digit goals the last 2 years. A lot of teams would be willing to overlook that and say, yeah, for 1.6, we'll take Jankowski and make him our fourth-line center. Absolutely.
And how much, though?
At the 1.6.
Okay.
I think he gets that, I think, without a problem.
I don't know. I think he gets around that, but I think let's just say Calgary will probably qualify him because I think he has value, even though he had a bad year.
Right. He's got size, and he's still a centerman, and he's a guy that's only a year removed from scoring double-digit goals. What is it going to cost you if you go out and get a fourth-line center in this league? It's going to cost you like $1.5 million.
Yeah. Now, I'm fairly sure that if they qualify these players, like say, for example, the Leafs have Max Verano, who we've talked about before.
Yeah.
Right?
Yep.
He was making $925 as an NHL player last year, but he spent most of the year in the minors, and I believe it was a 2-way deal, so he was only making, I think, something like $100,000.
Right.
If you qualify him, I believe that the qualifying offer is still a 2-way, but he's older, so it might be a 1-way.
No, I still think it would be a 2-way based on time served. I don't know if it's an age thing, and if it were, I think the Leafs would still sign him because the guy's fast and he has some talent, and you never know. And I think if they could use him for both, I think they'd sign him for both. Yeah. If they can't use him for both, then they might not qualify him.
Now, I saved this one for last. I'll stress before we discuss it. The Rangers will qualify Anthony DeAngelo. The question
is, no question
but the question is, they'll qualify him just simply to retain his rights so they can move him if they're going to move him, or go down the road of going down to arbitration. And the thing is, though, arbitration may not be friendly for the Rangers here based on what he did last year and what putting up 53 points. I mean, what's a 1 year arbitration award going to be on that? $4 million.
So he played at 9.25 last year. Right. Part of the challenge was they didn't have the cap space because they had Nemesnikov still under contract that they weren't able to move until into the season, so they weren't able to free up room. Right. So I had proposed last year a 2-year deal at about 1.3, 1.4 million last year, hoping just to get the second year, even though he came off a rather poor season the year before. My view on this is, I think based upon the way his contract works, if they sign him to a 2-year deal, they still would retain his rights because this is his first year as an RFA.
Right.
So Evolving Wild is a pretty good model, which is what, a lot of people have been following. Their proposal, which is what I thought was 2 years at about 4.7 mil per, would be a pretty substantive raise, but also gives them control. And if they want to move him, it's a salary that's other teams would be able to manage within the cap. And then clearly, as you get if you go longer term, but I think the problem is we talked a lot about Brady Shea, right? The Rangers eschewed a bridge deal and signed him to a 6-year deal, which immediately became a bad contract based upon the way his play declined. With D'Angelo, you have the on-ice stuff.
Declined with the Rangers. It didn't decline with Carolina.
Well, no, he didn't play great.
He still had a good. He did well though. He did.
Right, but I'm saying is, and this is where we get into, right. Part of it is my blog today of Quinn being the right guy. Part of it is the defensive system they utilize and whether or not it maximizes the talents that they have, right. And that's part of the problem also. So to me, look, I would probably go a 2-year deal on him, which gives you the rights and a substantive raise. I don't think they're going to go the 1-year route because they did that this year and they kind of got burned on it. They'd rather have some term associated with it. But, with the combination of his off-ice endeavors sometimes, which ends up taking away from his play, his struggles sometimes defensively, though he did get a lot better. He's really good in terms of zone exits, not good in terms of coverage. And part of that was probably playing with Mark Stahl also a little bit. But then also the pipeline of guys who are coming up, Lundqvist and Miller and Robertson and all the other guys they have. I think they're going to go short term and then maybe try to sign him long term, depending on how these other guys pan out.
Yeah. Now to answer Mob Talk Radio, saying that D'Angelo wants to go to Philly, he's from the area, yada yada. That used to be his plan, but if you watched the NHL Network draft special when he got passed over by the Flyers, and his dad goes, "That's the last time he'll ever want to play for them. He's never going to play for them." Something to that degree. That is probably going to hold because I don't think Philly wants him either based on that. You have to remember that is the kind of stuff that Jan is talking about that comes up. It's not simply just Twitter talk or simply just Trump talk. It's a lot of different talk. And the Rangers will put up with some of it, but they won't put up with a lot of it. And that's just the way they've always been as an organization. They will let you be opinionated to a certain degree, but when it becomes a problem, then that's when they might not give you the 4 years you're looking for. I don't think they're going to go any deeper than 3 years on them. And we'll see how that sort of goes. But whether you like it or not, and I know some people have said before when I talk about this, Jan, and you just mentioned it, they think, well, you're just saying that, Russ, because you're not a Trumper. No, it has nothing to do with that. But it's just go follow his Twitter account. It's a lot more than that. And they don't like that. Go tell me all the other Rangers that are tweeting about situations that are on the edge. There aren't any. There really aren't any. And that's the thing. He'll be the one. And if he's leading the team in scoring, they'll put up with it.
I mean, this is not the NBA. And the thing is, it's like, honestly, I think the NHL inherently would want to be down the middle, non-political. Yes, they'll wear Black Lives Matter T-shirts or whatever because that's. But I think inherently they don't want to go down this road. They don't want Anthony D'Angelo being on the Hannity show, for crying out loud.
Right. So let me get into what Joe put into the chat in terms of with Strome. Yes. Strome also is a Trump supporter. However, he hasn't been as out in terms of his comments.
He's not vocal about anything, really.
Right. But I'm saying is, compare the two, right? He is a supporter, but in terms of the Twitter accounts that both of them have, right. D'Angelo has gone much more vociferous in terms of his backing, but in terms of some of the other comments. But it wasn't just the Trump. It was the stuff that went on with the analytics last week. It was the challenging guy to a fight. It's all the other components associated. It's not just who he backs politically, which, look, you can back whoever you want politically. I really don't care. That's your view and your perspective. The problem is when it bridges across to the interactions with others, and the viewpoint is that it could be a problem based vis-a-vis the viewpoint that the team has of you or the perspective that you give. That's where it gets to be a problem. If you start to bridge across having a bad publicity for the team to a certain extent, or your views that you're espousing put you contra to a lot of things, right? I wrote the term in my blog, toxic. I got ripped on it. I wasn't saying that he's toxic, but if your views end up being viewed as others as being toxic, the team will take that into account. Look, teams will always put up with athletes. We've seen that in the NFL. We've seen that in Major League Baseball. If you can produce, you're likely going to get a lot more bandwidth and leeway than if you're a guy, obviously, who's a 200 hitter. But at a certain point in time, as we've seen, teams are willing to cut bait. Look at Antonio Brown in football and look at others. Right? That's where you have to have that balancing act. And when the balance tips the other direction, teams will be more than happy to peel away from you.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, I've interviewed both guys, and I have no problem with either one of them. I think Strome's biggest problem is he wasn't good in the playoffs, and I think that's going to make the Rangers hesitant.
And Strome's Canadian. He's not a U.S. citizen.
I know.
So why is he even taking any political stand? I
mean, people like to do that, Mike.
Yeah, I guess. But and then we did mention that with Logan Couture before.
I mean, I don't go walking around about, hey, I love Justin Trudeau or not, but Canadians here seem to love doing it. So whatever.
Yeah. Davy Jones in the chat. What other potential destinations may there be for Pietrangelo other than Toronto? I heard an interesting theory yesterday about Vancouver, which would make a lot of sense.
I can see Vancouver.
Yeah, because they have some. But the thing is, remember with Vancouver, Quinn Hughes is not signed to a long-term deal. Pettersson's not signed to a long-term deal. Those take precedence. They're not going to go. If
they can bridge them both, though, if they're going to bring him in, and they might, and the players might agree to it.
Right. I mean, they have to sign Markstrom too. They are losing 10 in free agency. That clears about $4 million. And, guys like Brandon Sutter, I think, have 1 year left in their contracts. I'm just looking it up right now here. But
I know Morello's put in Rangers. I don't see the Rangers getting into Pietrangelo sweepstakes.
No, they don't. Let me rephrase it. Let me say this correctly. Not that they don't need him. That salary price point, given where they are right now, they have $13 million to try to sign 4 restricted free agents and consider what to do with Jesper Fast, not knowing what's going to happen with Henrik Lundqvist. They no way have anywhere close to that amount of money. And B, you're not, even if you're going to bring in Pietrangelo at $8 million, so you're going to have a first pair defense at $16 million with Trouba. I don't think they can go that direction.
And you have to consider this. In 2 years, they have to sign Kakko to an extension, and
you're gonna have to sign Hedo.
I will tell you this,
and you're gonna have to sign Adam Fox to an extension, and Ryan Lindgren to an extension, and Igor Shesterkin to an extension,
and Lafreniere in 3 years.
I will tell you this: if the Flyers playoff run doesn't go well, I can see the Flyers going.
But only if they can somehow get rid of Ghost's contract also.
Well, that's what they'll do. They'll make sure they're
gonna try to get rid of that contract. They may have to eat a substantive.
Yeah, they'll do it.
But with Vancouver, you look at their salary structure right now. Edler has got 1 more year at $6 million. Quinn, if you're lucky, you get Quinn Hughes on a bridge deal for making about $6 million. If you want to sign him long term, you're probably talking 7, 8, 8.5, 9. Depending on how really good he is. You could say that if you limit to a bridge deal and those monies flip flop and Edler retires or they don't bring him back, then you could have room for a veteran defenseman making 7 or 8. But there's just so many guys, and obviously if they basically give Seattle something to take Louis Eriksson's contract off their hands, they can clear even more cap space. But if they give him a first-round pick, maybe that
Eriksson's not even playing tonight. By then, he might be an LTIR guy for all we know.
Well, Jeff Galooly.
So, Mike, let me get there's a bunch of Ranger questions in the chat room, so let me grab a couple of them. First of all, that's a lot of left. That's part of the reason we talked about Trouba being a righty, Fox being a righty. There's been some chatter about moving DeAngelo to the left side, which is his offside. He's played there before. That would enable them to potentially keep him as the first-line pair if they want to put him with Trouba. In terms of Lundqvist and Miller, Lundqvist is playing in the Swedish Hockey League next year. He likely won't be over next year, maybe in 20.
All right, actually, we have breaking news. We probably should do the breaking news because I don't know how much longer Mike wants us to do it. Finish out the question, Jan.
21-22 is my opinion on Lundqvist. In terms of Miller, he'll start the season in Hartford. If he progresses like Ryan Lindgren did last year, where he went down and they had no choice but to call him up, he'll be up about a month or two into the season, but likely towards the latter part of the year. But Russ can answer some of those better than I can in terms of prospects.
No, but right now, this is more important. So the NHL has decided to penalize the Coyotes today, and here's the
wait, hear it first before you clap, Mike.
No, I know what it is. I just saw it.
Yeah.
Oh, that's a big cost.
This is a big cost. A 2022 and a 2021 first is a big cost. But you know what? This is an egregious thing that happened, and I support what the NHL is doing here because no team is going to ever think about doing this again.
That's the key, right? They have now sent a message saying, if you got, put it this way, it's now going to be higher if you ever try something like that, right? So it's not just going to be a second and a first. It's likely to be at least 2 firsts the next time if somebody else tries to do it. Wow. So
Arizona, do they have a 3rd round pick this year?
I don't think so. Hold on, I'll tell you in a second. I had it up when we were talking about it the other day.
Okay. While you're looking it up, let me read this because this is the interesting part of this. This is quoting from the statement that was released from Gary Bettman.
Mike, no 3rd rounder this year, no 3rd rounder next year.
Let me read this first. While the combined testing policy memoranda reference a fine of no less than $250,000 for each violation of the policy, I exercise my discretion to impose the aforementioned discipline, which I consider to be more appropriate given the specific circumstances of this case. So he's not penalizing the ownership money, but he's penalizing the organization, and he's blasting Chaika for doing this. This is the reason, and I'm sorry, you can say no till you're blue in the face. This is the reason why Chaika was fired. It was. And he didn't want to impose a financial penalty on new ownership, so he penalized them with draft picks.
Yeah, but again, so you didn't want to put a financial penalty on them. Now you've hampered their ability to get better in the future. So in essence, honestly, a financial penalty probably would have been more palatable because without a 3rd round pick, you're kind of taking away 2 major assets that they potentially had to increase the talent on that team. Look, and we saw this year, they made a nice run. You have Darcy Kemper as your goalie. You do need other assets, right? This is why, look, our opinion, it's been chatted about a lot. I do think they're going to try to get rid of Derek Stepan if they can find a taker for him and needing some salary. I do think Barrett Hayden's going to get a major chance of being your 1st or 2nd line center this year because you have to give him an opportunity, and they're going to try to bring in other draft picks to make up for the loss of the pick this year and next year.
Right. Like as the chat room said, Chaika did quit, but I think this was the pressure that exacerbated that because I'm sure they knew something bad was coming down the pike. And so now they're not drafting till the 4th round?
No, hold on. They do have a first. They lost only a 2nd rounder this year.
Okay.
Right. So they've lost now. Hold on one second. So this year they will be without now their 2nd and their 3rd rounder. Next year they will be without their 1st and their 3rd rounder. Though the 3rd rounder is a conditional pick that they've lost, right? And the 2nd rounder is a conditional pick.
So in the top 3 rounds the next couple of years, they don't have a lot of picks.
So the thing for next year, right, is related to the Taylor Hall trade. So if Taylor Hall resigns or the Coyotes win a playoff round, which didn't happen, the 2021 3rd round pick upgrades to a 2021 2nd round pick.
Ooh. That's why.
So actually, technically, if you think about it, if you view the play-in round as so they lost in the
playoffs.
They technically have now upgraded to a 2nd round pick, right? Right. So now they've lost their 1st. They no longer have a 3rd. So they have only a 2nd rounder next year.
Yeah. Let me just say this for the people in the chat. This is basically what happened with Chaika. It's like, okay, you quit or you're fired. Oh, I guess I'll quit because you're going to kill me either way.
It depends on again. There's a financial aspect as to what end. We don't know the financial aspect, right? If he resigned, did they work out a financial settlement? Or if he was fired, would he have been eligible for financial settlement also, right? So all those are components. It's a nuanced language. I agree with you. And look, he can now spin it saying, hey, I resigned.
Right.
And I didn't get fired. It's granted, we all know what was going to happen, but optics are optics.
And
now that it's done, it makes it a lot harder for a team to hire him.
And where is this job that he supposedly was?
Well, that's the whole thing. He needed to get that job before this announcement was made because now, like if the team would have signed him and this would have come down, it's easier to sell to a fan base. It's a lot harder to sell to a fan base now that this has come down.
Yeah, exactly.
Well,
I mean, granted, look, that's a big hit, though. That is, look,
that's a big hit.
Than I am. How does next year's draft project?
I haven't even looked at it.
Well, we'll talk about that tomorrow. I just want to mention quickly because we got to get going here. 3 games tonight. We covered Lightning's Bruins. Dallas is up 2-0 on Colorado. Have not heard anything about the status of Eric Johnson or Calvert. I'm assuming Francouz is going to start instead of Michael Hutchinson.
Yeah.
So, and we haven't heard any update on Grubauer. I'd be surprised if Grubauer is back in these playoffs. Just touching on quickly on the early game, Islanders-Flyers. Islanders outplayed Philly by leaps and bounds in game 1. Russ, what do they do to bounce back? What can they do?
I think they're going to put in JVR. It's a matter of if they take out Pitlick or, somebody else on the lower lines. But Pitlick played the least, so I'm thinking there's a chance he's going to be out. So I think that, and I think you take out Ghost and you put in Hag. Again, I would put Raffle on the top line, so you create some sandpaper there and a guy who actually will go and retrieve the puck. Whether they do that, I don't know.
Dan, what do you think on that game?
I think JVR definitely comes in. I don't think there's any doubt about that. I mean, we talked about it the other day. They need to get offense. And B, I think one of the things they're going to focus on is quicker puck movement through the defense in the neutral zone. They can't try to carry. It's got to be quicker puck movement. And
right.
Look, we don't start seeing more from Claude Giroux. I don't think it's going to matter anyway what they do because he really hasn't shown up so far in these playoffs.
Right.
All right, good job, guys. Well, we'll be back tomorrow with another edition of the Hockey Buzzcast for Jan Levine, who's still here, for Russ Cohen. I'm Michael Lagello. Thanks for watching. And remember, without the